Okay, so I want to be upfront about something before I say anything else on this topic. I don't have to. I'm not standing here as a father who has lived this out and is reporting on what worked. I'm not that guy. Not yet. What I am is a man who is thinking very seriously about this, before it happens. Who is watching other men navigate it, some well, some not, and trying to figure out what I actually believe about it before I'm in the middle of it and having to make decisions in real time without having thought any of it through. And honestly, I think that's a legitimate place to have this conversation from. Maybe more legitimate than it sounds. Because the men who seem to get this right are almost never the ones who figured it out on the fly. They're the ones who had already decided something about who they wanted to be as a father before that moment arrived. So this is me deciding out loud with you. The thing I keep coming back to is this: I don't want to raise a son who performs faith. I want to raise a son who actually has it. And the gap between those two things is quite enormous, and almost everything about how faith gets passed down in families collapses in that gap in the long run. Here's what I mean. Most of what gets called raising kids in faith is really just raising kids in the habits and language of church on Sunday. Grace before meal, vacation, Bible study. And none of those things are bad. I'm not saying that they're bad, but they can produce a kid who knows all the right words and has zero actual relationship with God, who performs Christianity for the family environment and then quietly walks away from it and leaves the moment that they go out of the house, right? Because it was never really there in the first place. In Deuteronomy 6, there's a passage that I've returned to on this, and what strikes me about it is that it doesn't describe a formal program. It describes a curriculum. It says, talk about these things when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you raise up. The whole picture of integration, right, is woven into ordinary moments, rather than reserved for designated spiritual time, right? That's the real different thing entirely. And I think it's a lot harder because it means you can't just outsource it, right? You can't just hand it to this church on Sunday and call it covered, right? It means the man in the home has to be living something real enough that it naturally comes up in conversation, that there's something actually there to pass on. And that's why it's really uncomfortable for me personally. Because the question that raises is not what kind of father do I want to be, it's what kind of man am I becoming right now before I am a father. Because you can't give your son something that you don't have. You can't model the faith you're not actually living. You can't pass on conviction that you're just performing. So in a real sense, how I raise my son actually starts right now, in the habits that I'm building right now, in the honesty I'm developing now about what I actually believe and why. In that consistency between who I am in public and who I am when nobody's watching me, right? The model I keep thinking about is revealed of Christ's life, that scripture almost entirely skips, right? In Luke 2, verse 52, it says, Jesus increased his wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Decades condensed into just one single verse. No miracle recorded, no clouds, just a man growing in obscurity in an ordinary home, being born before he was ever developed. So what was happening in that home? We don't know the details. But Joseph was there, a man who showed up quietly, did what he was asked without intent, protected what was his in care, what he was in care of, right? And apparently he did well enough that the Son of God grew up in that environment. and came out of that environment ready for everything else that followed. Joseph never preaches a sermon about, he doesn't have a single recorded line of scripture attributed to him. What he has is a presence, a quiet faithfulness. And apparently that was enough to be the earthly environment in which Christ himself was formed. And that picture does something to me every time I sit with it, because it suggests that the most important thing a father passes on to his son is not theological content. It's not even good values, technically. It's the picture of a real life lived in front of him. And when the man handles wholeness, the way he treats his wife, whether his faith is something he retreats to in crisis or something he actually lives in every day. Now, I think about God of War, right? The whole arc between Kratos and Atreus. And what's interesting to me is how much Atreus learns from watching, not from being forced. Every lesson that actually lands in the story lands because Atreus witnessed something his father did. The instructions are almost seconded. The boy is reading constantly, whether the man knows it or not, constantly being watched. I'm going to be read like that someday. My son, if I have one, is going to run everything that I say through a comparison with what he sees me do. And if those two things don't match, then the words lose every time. Kids have like an almost perfect detector for the gap between what a man says and who a man actually is. They calibrate according to what they see, or what's the thing that I'm sitting with the most seriously right now. Before I'm a father, not what I'll say to my son about faith, what will he see? What will he see from me? Now here's the question I'm going to ask myself. If my son followed the example that I'm setting right now, not the example I intend to set, the actual one, where does he end up after that? What does his faith look like? What does his marriage look like? What kind of man does he become? That question is very clarifying in a way that most other questions aren't, because it removes the gap between intention and execution. It asks the actual thing, not the desired outcome. There's a verse, Proverbs 22 verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I used to read that as a promise about outcomes. If you do the right things, the kid turns out right. But I was starting to kind of read it differently, right? The way he should go. That's not just a destination, it's a direction. A man, a life, something to walk towards. You train a child in the direction by walking it yourself. That's the whole thing. Now, I don't know exactly what kind of father I'll be. I'm definitely not there yet, but I know the kind of man I need to become before I get. And that process is already underway, whether I'm paying attention to them, and man, it's a difficult one. So you might as well pay attention, okay? Pay attention to who you are, who you're becoming, and who you want to be. And you guys made it to the end of the video. I hope to see you in the next one.